your legislative package, you have a minority package and you have a
Yes.
legislative package. Are some of the things you just spoke of in there, or some
Yeah,
of
one of the key functions, or one of the key bills, we have a 10-point minority Senate package, and one of the key points is fiscal notes. And I've been talking about that before I got in office. And a fiscal note, I think it started originally in Minnesota, now maybe 35 states or more have them. And what it basically says is this: you know that when somebody comes and they propose a bill with an appropriation, they say it's only going to cost $20,000 or it's only going to cost $500,000. But you look at that bill, that program, that department, that activity over a 5-year, 10-year period, and the proponents have already said, and they know, by that period of time, 5 years or 10 years down the road, we're going to be looking at 5 million, 10 million, 50 million. The public and the legislators deserve to know that at the outset. So a fiscal note basically means you put a document on that appropriation bill and you say what it's going to be exactly. And then people can hold other people responsible for that. But you know, it's more transparency. You know what the costs are going to be.
You know, as we speak, we have just submitted that as to be embedded into the House rules.
Yeah.
That there will be public price tags on these things, because sometimes not only are the unknown consequences, but the unknown quantity, as you're saying, when you pass a bill and then you really actually end up getting the invoice.
Exactly.
Extremely different.
And then these, as you know, I mean, these programs grow like topsy. And usually what they do is they will put more personnel on, they'll have more bureaucracy, it becomes top heavy, like Department of Education, which is one of my favorite areas. We've called for a long time for a total financial and management audit of the Department of Education. Lieutenant Governor Iona had called for that during the campaign, and people poo-pooed him. But look, it's $2.7 billion. We've got fewer classroom teachers. We've got fewer enrollees in public schools. We're trying to close the public schools.
Yes.
They want to close our 2 schools in East Oahu, actually 3, Cocoa Head, Kamilawiki, and Liliuokalani. The first 2 are 2 of the 3 top performing schools in the state. They want to close them, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And yet you've got more of these bureaucrats and people outside the classroom. So cut we will, cut we must.
Do you have others in the Senate or people who have been saying that the DOE should be closing schools, they should be doing consolidation and getting more aggressive with that?
There are several that do that. I thought you were going to ask me, do I have several in the Senate that feel that some of these areas should be pared down in terms of government expense? And I would say absolutely. But nothing happens when you have a one-party government. When the odds are 24-1, the people that are independent learn to keep their mouths shut, because otherwise they lose their committee assignments or they lose the ability to pass their bills. So they would rather be quiet about it. And that's unfortunate. That's why we don't get full and open debate. We talk about transparency, but you know and I know we don't really have transparency. And we also know that the legislature is really good about passing bills telling other people how to live, how to do this, how to do that, and then we exempt ourselves from those very bills. We don't do it for the legislature. We're not subject to Chapter 92F, which is the sunshine requirement for the state. So I think that's one of the reasons why people have such a low regard for Congress and for legislatures. They feel that the legislators don't listen to them, and we have to do a better job. And you and I, as leaders, have to do a better job of explaining these bills, and that's what we're trying to do.
That's one of the reasons why we're talking today,
Absolutely.
because it's just at the very beginning of the session. We hope to update you as we get halfway through, time permitting
pleasure.
on your part, with the 14 committees that you're on. I'm on 4, by the way, so
Yeah.
I'm not
Slacker.
taking a bite.
Slacker.
If we could only help you, but a lot of people don't realize that your institution, the Senate, is almost separate and without that much overlap, except when we have State of the Judiciary, State
Right.
of the Union. They're almost passing in the night.
Until we
in a
go
lot
to
of things.
conference committees.
And then we go to
end,
conference
at the end
committees.
of the session, yeah.
But it's really where there's quite a division, and you, quote, are the more deliberating
Yep.
body of the two, whereas we're more the knee-jerk, the populist, the ones that react more quickly to the people's needs. Maybe on the national level that's the case. I think probably both of us are a bit.
Well, we've got what, 3,500 bills that have been introduced this year.
Was that the latest count?
House and Senate, and the deadline for bills was yesterday, so we know how many we've got right now. And a lot of these bills, of course, will not even get hearings. Out of the 3,500, if we have 250 that become law, that will be the annual average. So a lot of these bills are somebody's favorite bill, or somebody does it as a favorite. By the way, you were asking about, you know, the kind of response we get in popular bills. I got to tell you that one of our senators introduced a bill that had to do with trapping feral cats, and in the last 24 hours alone, I have over 350 emails that came in opposition to that bill. So you want to get people involved, have something to do with dogs or cats or mongoose or maybe even keiki. But that's it. Taxes and fiscal issues, they're more difficult, and people don't understand them because we have not done a good job of explaining what the unintended consequences are. You and I, with our economic background and business background, we can do that, but we've got to do a better job in the future.
Sam, that's one of the overlaps that we do have in our background, small business. Also, in the caps that we wear, we are the co-chairs of the Small Business Caucus. I have
right.
Angus McKelvey in the House, and you have Carol Fukunaga as the other co-chair in the Senate. Why aren't there more small business people out there coming and running and becoming?
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, right now we have probably more lawyers and social workers in the mindset.
Activists.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, you know the answer to that. It's real simple. The business people can't run for office because they're running their business. It's like when we have issues down here about taxes that affect business or minimum wage, and maybe 3 or 4 business people will sign up, and the unions will bust in 50 or 100 people, and my colleagues will turn to me straight face and say, well, if this is such an important business issue, where are the business people? They're in their business. They're running their business. They work 7 days a week. They work 80, 90 hours a week. They pay the wages to their employees. They take care of their customers. They pay their taxes. They pay their fees. That's why. And so they don't have an opportunity to come down here. And that's why they don't run for office.
But there was a time when, quote, the big four, the big businesses ran Hawaii.
That's right. And there's a significant difference between whether it's the big 5, big 4, regulated businesses and the mom and pop kinds of businesses, and small independent businesses, which you and I represent. We're not getting subsidies, we're not getting bailouts, we're not getting anything else. And the bulk of the legislation comes down on us. And we don't have the opportunity to go out and hire lobbyists or PR people or even attorneys. And that's why things like tort reform are so necessary, because if we're threatened with lawsuits, all of a sudden you put the business on the side here, and you have to address those kinds of issues. And they're much more important. The other thing is, you were the first one to start the Small Business Caucus decades ago, and you've done a good job with that. But you know, we get lip service down here at the legislature. Oh, small business is important. Oh, small business is the backbone of our community. Both of which is true. But for one day a year, the legislature, the government will hail small business, and for 364 days a year, they'll tax us, they'll regulate us, they'll mandate us. And that's the problem, mainly because most of them have never met a private payroll in their lives. And that's a big difference when you have to do that.
You know who's going to be the most cheered this session? In addition to the small business, we're going to get a lot of rhetoric. Our farmers.
Yes, yes.
Which reminds me, going from the very broad down to the very narrow in our district.
Yes.
You know, we have our Kamilo Nui farmers who are in a crisis with the...
who are getting older every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Any perspective on what's going to happen to our farmers in Kamilo Nui Valley?
Well, you know, they're in negotiations right now with Kamehameha Schools, Bishop Estate. But it's clear to me, and I hope I'm not talking out of turn, but Bishop Estate, Kamehameha Schools, they really don't care about small business. I'm a lessee. I have to disclose. I'm a lessee of
your office, right?
Of my office, that's right. And they've never done anything to help small businesses. And the farmers are the smallest of the small businesses. And as I mentioned, I mean, of course, the farmers are getting older. Children of farmers don't want to go into farming. They want to go to law school. They want to go to somewhere else. They don't want to go to farming. It's hard. It's really, they don't want to be in small business. It's hard. And they've watched over the years too many times when dad can't come to that Little League baseball game or can't come to the play. Why? Because he's got a deadline and he's got to work and he's got to keep the business going. They don't want to do that. People today, they want virtual offices. They want to do stuff on their laptop. They don't want to have the storefront and deal with all that. And the farmers, I mean, every day is something new. It's a new bug. It's a new drought. It's a new regulation. All of those things, it's really tough. I take my hat off to them, and you have done a great deal to try to represent them and support them. And I will too, to the extent that we can, but the handwriting is on the wall. Everything is development oriented and big land deals, not farm.
Well, you know my ideal, maybe naive Peace Corps background, and I'm going to be very positive in making a prognostication. I think because there's only 15 years left on the leases, and they are old, and they're barely making a living, I think that Bishop Estate will be wise enough to see that they could increase, maybe wrench out a few more 10, 15, 25,000 on each of those lessees. But in terms of the public relations, because the community in Hawaii Kai, your district and mine, is very, very attentive to what's going on. They're very concerned with what's going on. And I think,
as we should be,
winning the battle of the economics of the farmers and then losing the public relations war, Bishop Estate has got other big fish to fry in other places.
Yeah.
And my sense is they will settle, not immediately and not without some acrimony, but I think they'll let our farmers go, and the 15 years will, maybe not happily ever after, but their hard work that they're doing.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right, because as we both know, when the original proposal came out for the lease negotiation, it was what, 25 times what they had?
Yeah, 2,800 times.
2,800, yeah.
Tremendous.
And people said, well, they were only paying a little bit, you know, they should pay a lot more like the rest of us. Well, they were paying, you know, per acre and all of that. And as you said, it's not a profitable business, or everybody would be in farming. It's hard work. They're scraping out a living. And here we are, everybody's saying, buy local, buy Hawaiian. And here are the folks that are doing it. We've got to support them. And you would hope that Bishop Estate would step up to the plate and do that. But as I say, you're more optimistic than me, but I'd be very happy if you're right.
Other problems that we have, we got cabins on Kaiwi, fortunately dormant. And by the way, as a new piece of information, there's been an Eva Beach Golf Academy that was just established. So whether there can be two in this state is another issue. The schools, we got to work together to keep the schools open.
That's right.
That's a very, very key issue.
You know, the thing that I mentioned at several public hearings, for decades, the taxpayers were called upon to spend more money on education. Why? To reduce the teacher-pupil ratio. So here we are. Now we have schools that are smaller, right? And now we're saying, oh, they're too small, let's close them. Where's the logic for that? If they're performing schools, and if the community supports them, and we've seen an outpouring of teachers, parents, students, and the community, because a public school in the community is not just an educational institution. It is a magnet for other activities within that community. And our community loves our schools and has supported our schools. So it's very short-sighted. I made the statement, instead of closing the schools, close the DOE.
Senator, the last complaint I have is from someone who used to be the governor of the state of Hawaii. And the road conditions in your district and mine need to be improved. We got to work on that. We've got 30 seconds to say goodbye to the people. What are your closing remarks?
Well, my closing remarks are we never give up, never, never, never. And get the public involved. Let us know how we can help you, because we'll stand here. We don't care whether there's one of us or 8 of us or whatever. We'll stand for what's right, and we'll help you out. And
Senator
thanks for having me.
Slom, you are as optimistic and perhaps as idealistic as I am. Thanks for being on Word for Word.
My pleasure.
Thank you for viewing. I'm Representative Gene Ward, having interviewed Senator Sam Slom. Thank you and aloha.